Hey, welcome to another episode of Flavor and Fiction. For those of you tuning in for the first time, where have you been? No, just kidding. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Flavor and Fiction is a segment where I read a book from my 2023 reading challenge, and then I give you a review, and then I make a recipe using a food mentioned in the book. So you get your flavor and your fiction. So, Flavor and Fiction. And this time the category was a murder mystery, and I chose The Silent Patient by Alex, I want to say this correctly, Michaelides, or Michaelides, I'm not sure. It was a very popular book all over social media, so it was already on my general reading list. So when this category came up, I was like, okay, I know what I'm picking. And I did not regret it. And for our recipe, the ingredient mentioned in the book was beer. And I've seen that in so many books that I've read, and I keep passing it by because I don't drink beer. I don't like beer. But I decided this time I'm going to use beer, and we are going to make a cheddar beer bread. So I just finished making it. It's cooling right now, and I'm going to do a little taste test for you at the end of this video. But before I show you the recipe and do the taste test, let's get into this book. And today's video is going to be a little short because I'm late for work, or I'm going to be late for work. So I'm just going to give you the rundown, no spoilers, because it is a murder mystery after all. So no spoilers. And so it starts with a woman named Alicia Berenson. She's a famous artist, a famous painter, and she's married to a famous photographer. And it starts with you knowing that she has been convicted of his murder. So that's not a spoiler, that's how it starts. So she's been convicted of his murder, and instead of going to jail, she gets sent to a psych hospital because she hasn't spoken a word since it happened. She didn't speak a word in the courtroom. She hasn't spoken a word to anyone, and she looks like she's locked in or something, like she's not really connecting with anyone, making eye contact. She's just gone. So she gets sent to a psych hospital, and then 5 or 6 years later, here comes Dr. Theo Faber, that's his name. So he is the person who is telling this story pretty much. He is a doctor, and he's been obsessed with this case. He's been fascinated with this case. So when an opportunity comes up to work at her psych hospital, he takes it. He wants to be her doctor. He wants to, his dream is to he wants to be the one to make her talk, to tell the world what really happened, because everyone still wants to hear from her. She's still in the news, and every once in a while coming up, it's just a big mystery that no one has really been able to solve. And the way her husband was killed at home, and he was tied up, and she was the only one on the grounds by the time the police got there. So that's all we know about the murder to start with. And as he's digging in, he's also dealing with his own problems at home. His wife is having an affair. He's trying to follow her and figure out, should he confront her? So he's going through a lot. And then dealing with her stuff is even more, because he ends up being kind of like an investigator more than a psychiatrist. So he ends up, and again, I said no spoilers. So he finds some clues. He gets some clues here and there. And instead of turning them over to the authorities, like he should, he decides he's going to follow up. He talks to people he shouldn't be talking to. He's trying to put stuff together because the main questions of the book are, will Alicia speak? Who actually killed her husband? Will Theo confront his wife? And how do things connect? And there's a whole list of suspects. There's a jealous friend. There's an ex. There's family members who are sketchy, and doctors who are sketchy. So there's no shortage of people it could be. And the reason I like this book so much is because it gave me a real true surprise, which is rare these days. I feel like in most stories you can kind of say okay, in the first quarter of the book, you're this person did it. And it still may be interesting to read, to figure out how they did it and how to put it together, but you feel like you already know. I can say that this is the first time in a long time that I read a book and a mystery and was truly surprised by the end. Remember the feeling when you watched The Sixth Sense for the first time And it was just like, oh, that's the level of surprise. I'm not saying, but that's the level of surprise that I got. So I really appreciated it. I don't know if they're going to make this into a movie or not, but I think it would be a really good one. My review is 2 thumbs up. I would tell you more, but of course it's a murder mystery and I don't do spoilers. And I don't know if this was his first book, but I know that he has a few others. So I may check them out, but I mean, this is the one that was all over social media that everyone's been talking about. So I was like, okay, this sounds like the best one. So I'm going to start with this one. So I can't speak for any others, but this one is worth the read. Okay, so now it's time to do our taste test for this cheddar beer bread. And then after I eat it, I'm going to take it to work, which is mainly why I made it in the morning, because I know that I can't eat like a whole loaf of cheddar beer bread, even if it's really good. So I'm going to have my little sample, take it to work, and let my coworkers do the rest. You start by buttering your loaf pan. You take your 3 cups of flour, you add your baking powder, your sugar, and your salt, and you whisk it all together. Kind of hard to do with one hand holding a camera. And then you add your cheddar cheese, about 1 cup's worth, and you mix that in, preferably with 2 hands. Now it's time to put in your beer, whatever brand you want, 12 ounces, and then you mix that up. And it should be about this consistency when it's done. I had to add a little bit more beer than it called for. Put it in the oven for 50 to 55 minutes at 350, and then put it on a cooling rack. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. I just cut a piece. Here it is, so you can see the inside, not let it fall. That's pretty much how it looks in the picture on Pinterest. When I cut it, it was very, very dense. So I'm nervous. I put in more beer than it called for because after I added the recommended amount, it wasn't the consistency that it was in the picture that it should be. So I added a little more beer. So I'm hoping that didn't mess everything up here, but I got the little end piece. So we're just going to try this together. Here we go. Uh-huh. I feel like the recipe may have called for too much flour, first of all. I don't like the consistency. I don't like the flavor. I don't like it. And I'm not going to take this to work because I'm not going to serve something to people that I wouldn't eat. I'm not eating this. I feel like I can taste the beer. Well, unlike the book, that was a disappointment. That's all I can say. It's not good. I don't like it. Maybe I did it a disservice by adding more beer, but otherwise, like, it was so dry after putting the mix wasn't like a batter. It was just, and I added everything exactly. So I'm confused as to where I went wrong, but this is wrong. I had like the last 3 recipes I did were so good. I was on a roll and then this had to happen. But anyway, at least I know I'm not cooking with beer anymore unless it's maybe chili. That's it for me. So even though I did not enjoy this recipe, I always post a link to the book and to the recipe in my description below. So I'll do that. But if you decide to make it, or if you have already made it, let me know your secret. Let me know where I went wrong, because Anyway, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Flavored Fiction. Happy reading, happy eating, and I'll see you next time.